Welcome! You are listening to the Overseas Life Redesign podcast, where you'll hear fun, relaxed, and inspirational interviews with people who are really living the dream. I'm Dawn Fleming, an attorney turned alchemist, and your host for the show, coming to you from the tropical island paradise of Isla Mujeres, Mexico. This show was created for courageous souls willing to step out of their comfort zone and design a new way of life. You'll gain inspired midlife wisdom from those who have done it as we share experiences, strategies, and offer practical steps you can take to redesign your life overseas. Listen and you'll believe if you can dream it, you can achieve it. We are going to be diving into a new topic for the second quarter. Started this month, new quarter, and the topic is wealth. And this is a big topic. We're going to be covering a lot of different facets of wealth. And today, I wanted to kick off the topic with what's being termed longevity planning rather than retirement planning, right? The soul did not come here to retire. You guys know that's my philosophy. So we're talking about longevity planning, about living well and living a long life. And how are we going to do that? And the subtitle is, what's your return on life? When we talk about wealth, a lot of times you hear the term ROI, right? Return on investment. And, that's all well and good, but we know there's much more to life than just money. And so what I kind of want to kick off this topic with is to kind of dive into what is wealth. Right? That's kind of the overreaching topic. And at what point are we rich? How much stuff must we accumulate before we've won? Right? The person with the most toys wins? Maybe, maybe not. So and now part of wealth obviously is income. And we know that income is pretty much the number one showstopper for those who are wanting to move overseas. That's what comes in really in the number one spot. If you see the questions when you come into the Claim Your Dream Life group, I always ask, what are you struggling with the most, or what would you most like to learn about? And that's the answer is income. That's the biggest obstacle that people are facing. So I wanted to share a funny story with you. Last June, I was in Minnesota. I went to see my family, and I hadn't seen them in a long, long time. My nephew, Thomas, very precocious child, and my brother tells me he's actually gotten very interested in money and earning money and saving money and all of that. And we got to spend a good amount of time together, which was really fun. And it was just he and I alone. I was actually standing in the kitchen of a condo that we had rented together, and he said to me, Auntie Donnie, are you rich? And out of the mouths of babes, right? And I said, well, Thomas, what does it mean to be rich? What do you mean by rich? And he said, well, do you have a lot of money? And I said, well, what's a lot of money, Thomas? And he said, well, like $1 million. And I said, well, my house in Mexico is worth over $1 million, but that doesn't mean I have $1 million in my bank account to spend. So he thought about that for a moment. I said, but Thomas, I believe there's much more to being rich than having a lot of money. And I said, to me, I have lots of friends. I have my health. I have a loving family. I've got a great husband. I'm living a great life. And so in my view, Thomas, I'm a very rich woman, and it doesn't have to do with just money. But it's so funny as I think about that conversation with him at a tender age where they're just starting to learn, right, about money and income and thinking about earning on their own. And it was just a really eye-opening conversation to have with my little nephew. So who do you listen to for financial advice? I kind of feel like Thomas was almost, asking, kind of exploring, whether I was a good person to get financial advice from. But I mentioned in Claim Your Dream Life, and even as I speak, I've always talked about how much Robert Kiyosaki's philosophy, when it comes to financial advice, has played a huge role in for Tom and I. And he kind of taught me to ask this question: the person you're getting advice from, do they have the lifestyle that you want? And that really made a lot of sense to me. Like, why would you listen to someone about financial advice unless they have the lifestyle that you want? And we know that I know the first time I ever heard him speak, I talk about in Claim Your Dream Life, and as I spoke last week, actually last weekend when I was speaking the first time in a long time, I was talking about how sitting there listening to him the first time was so impactful to me. And one of the things that he shared that really just left a big impression on me was when he would go to see his accountant, or financial planner, right? And he's on the treadmill and he's working, he's trading time for money, he's getting his paycheck, and he looks over and there's his accountant, right, who's on the same treadmill. He's supposed to be the smart one when it comes to money, and yet he's in the rat race, trading time for money, doing the grind just the same as Robert was. And so he kind of scratched his head and was like, is this really like a good person that I should be listening to, taking financial advice from? And I say that that's a good question to ask for your financial advisors as well. Now, when it comes to retirement, which is what financial advisors purportedly are supposed to be helping us with, right? Retirement is actually one of the top 10 stressful life events, like a job loss or divorce or whatever. So retiring is up there. And we know that financial planners really are solely focused on money for the vast majority of them. There's a few I'm learning that are branching out into other arenas to try to help people. But they're really focused on your financial assets and the planning process with respect to money and financial matters. So, but that facet of planning, retirement planning, is maybe 25% of the entire planning process, right? Financial planners are not trained to help their clients transition to a new life of significance that goes beyond their work life or their career identity. And I share in the book that our rule for financial experts has always been they need to be doing better financially than we are. So when we were in Florida and earning good income, and people would pitch me for their financial advisory services, I would ask them, can you show me where you're making $10,000 or $20,000 a month on a passive residual income, in other words, without you doing anything. And if they couldn't do that, then I would politely decline their offer to get together for coffee or to discuss financial matters, because why would we take advice from someone who, with respect to financial matters, who's not doing as well as we were? So that was just kind of how we have operated. And so as a result, we've actually done very well with educating ourselves about financial matters for sure, but in really all facets of planning and really having a good quality of life. And that's really what we're going to talk about, is sort of the intersection between our wealth, our financial matters, and all the other things that are important to us in our life, because we don't want that sole focus to be on financial, and then we really are unbalanced when it comes to the other areas of our life. So I want to talk about retirement for a moment, because I think it's always good if we go back into history and see what we can learn from that. And the reality of it is retirement did not exist. The whole concept of retirement didn't exist prior to the pre-industrial era. There was a shift away from vocations, right, which was mostly rural and mostly entrepreneurial. So think back, self-sufficient craftsmen, skilled workers, whether it's, there's still some today, but that was the majority of workers back then, right? You had crafts people, whether they were carpenters or shoemakers or, whatever. They were skilled workers that took pride in their work, and they actually controlled their own process for production. In other words, they'd start, a cabinet maker would go get the wood, and they would make the cabinet, and they would finish it, and they would sell it. And so they had the whole production process that they were in charge of, they were in control of. When that shift occurred, when we started going into the industrial era, there became a dependence on factories and migration to the cities, where workers performed a small piece of a bigger production process. And work was transformed from, this craftsman entrepreneurial process where you had apprentices and vocations and all that, to a means to an end, which was to collect that paycheck at the end of the week or the 2 weeks. And there was really no emotional reward. There wasn't that pride of workmanship that we saw in the pre-industrial era. Then, of course, World War II happened, and Social Security was in part created as a way to get older workers to exit the workplace so that younger workers would have jobs during a period where there was scarcity of jobs. So now we have, of course, unfunded pension liabilities that are threatening that financial safety net that many retirees depend on. And many don't have pensions at all, because there was also a transition in about the 70s or 80s when ERISA came along, that they went away from defined benefit plans to defined contribution plans. So you weren't guaranteed a particular monthly pension when you retired. You were going to get the contributions, sometimes matched or added to, but you were basically self-funding your retirement rather than having a pension. So that obviously shifted in the favor of corporations and to the detriment of the workers. So the financial planning industry, of course, loved that. Now everybody's on their own for planning their own finances, their own retirement, figuring all of that out. So that cottage industry sort of exploded. And it's really been all about the money. It's not been a focus on what that money was going to be used for, rather just accumulate as much as possible. And I think back to our network marketing days, we always talked about going deeper into someone's why. Typically, someone would start a side gig in the industry because they wanted to make some extra money. And we would say, well, why do you want to make extra money? And they'd say, well, because I need to pay my bills, or I need to get out of debt, or they'd have some other more material, abstract reason for why they were starting the side gig business. And we always worked hard with them to identify what is it that money is going to get you in terms of your quality of life. And maybe it would be trips, maybe it would be experiences, for example, more time with your family. But the reason we would ask that question is because entrepreneurship is hard. And there are moments people get all excited when they start a business. And then when you're in the grind and people are not saying yes to you, you're getting no's, you're going to you need something to give you some staying power to stick with it, right? And so just paying your bills or getting out of debt, you go, ah, heck with this. There's got to be a better way, right? Whereas if you've really identified something that's more concrete, that is more emotional, more rewarding for you, you're going to be more likely to be take a deeper interest in doing the activities that you need to do to stay with it. And I think there's a parallel there with the financial planning side. There's a huge gap in retirement funds, and I think that might be part of it. Is if you just are accumulating some big pile of money and you don't really have an idea of where that money is going to be going, what it's going to be used for, you're not going to really be that highly incentivized to save, right? So what I'm talking about here is a focus of the return on your life, not the return on your investment. So the difference is a pile of money versus living your best life. Now, obviously, the two are somewhat related, but they're very different energies, right? The focus on the pile of money, the accumulation of a particular amount of money in your bank account, versus really, what does that dream life look like? What do I want to experience? What do I want to be, do, or have with that money, right? But sometimes the money isn't really relevant. So if you're just focusing on retirement planning from a financial standpoint, you're really missing out on all of these other rich facets of your life that are going to make your best life, living your best life possible.
We'll be back in a moment.
Isla Mujeres is a Caribbean jewel off the coast of Cancun. Castilito del Caribe warmly invites you to enjoy our spectacular oceanfront villa located in the heart of El Centro and a short walk to Playa Norte, which is ranked one of the top 10 beaches in the world. With an ocean view of crystal clear turquoise waters overlooking both the Caribbean and Cancun city skyline, we offer a fabulous location for you to enjoy all the peace and tranquility you're looking for on vacation, while also taking in all the excitement the island has to offer, with activities either in walking distance or a golf cart day excursion away. Please visit CastilitoCaribe.com, www.CastilitoCaribe.com. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Is it time to go? Are you starving for adventure and new experiences? Ready to lower your living costs and upgrade your quality of life? Do you long for the freedom to live anywhere with the economic satisfaction of earning in paradise? Imagine waking up in paradise every day saying, "Pinch me, is this real?" You can live a happier, healthier, and more joyful life. Don't know where to start? Then grab our free Paradise Checklist to begin dreaming again and start defining your paradise. It's waiting for you at paradisechecklist.com. Welcome back to the Overseas Life Redesign podcast. Thank you so much for being here, and we invite you to subscribe if you like what you hear. Don't get me wrong, a financial plan is important, but what we teach is the focus needs to be on the monthly cash flow, not the size of the nest egg. And that, I think, is a big differentiator between what you're seeing out there in the financial planning arena. In fact, there's a huge gap between what clients want from their financial planners versus what they are actually getting. One example is in the realm of real estate. Now, there was a study done by a group called Hearts and Wallets, and they surveyed their clients on the financial planning side and said that only 6% of clients got help with real estate planning. But people who are over 55 spend about 40% of their income on their housing. So that's a huge amount, right? So there's a big disconnect between the advice that people are getting about their real estate and the percentage of their resources that are actually going toward that particular asset, if you will, which Kiyosaki says your house isn't an asset, it's a liability. An asset puts money in your pocket, a liability costs you money. So unless you have an income property like we do, that actually puts money in your pocket, that's an asset. If you are just living in a house that you're not renting, you don't have income from, then that is a liability. And your financial planner will not tell you that. They will insist that your house is an asset. But I digress. So the research also shows that retirees who spend less on housing have less anxiety than other retirees, as well as reporting a higher level of financial security. So there's a big connection there between the percentage of your income that you spend in your housing and your stress levels and your feelings of financial security. Now we know, and I talk about in Claim Your Dream Life, geo arbitrage is a brilliant strategy. So, and that's simply maintaining your current income level, but reducing your cost of living expenses. So there is no financial strategy that can lower your living expenses by 50% as effectively as retiring abroad. And you can literally live like a millionaire overseas on a modest budget, what would be a modest budget in the United States. And that way there's no you don't have to sacrifice a great quality of life now to hopefully have a bright economic future someday. Moving can provide you with the opportunity to travel, live in beautiful places, dine out frequently. You can enjoy personal services such as massages, housekeeping, and many others at a fraction of what you pay in the United States. I had a massage yesterday. It was 550 pesos, and I threw in a 100 peso tip. So 6,500 pesos. That's about $32 for a 1-hour massage. Now, I was just in Florida. There was a gentleman there who was a massage therapist, and he was quoting $100 an hour. So we're talking a third of the cost of that particular service in Mexico. And this is actually a fairly expensive place to live where we are. As I like to say, and there's many other examples. I refer you back to my podcast, the Overseas Life Redesign podcast, the story I think I shared with you with George White, who's an international house sitter, been doing that for about 3 years now, doubled his personal and business bank account by house sitting in other people's homes, watering their plants, cuddling their animals. He doesn't have any housing expenses. He doesn't have car expenses. And so he's been able to save money and increase his nest egg at 72 years old. Becca, single mom, lives like a millionaire, $100,000 a year, an amazing life. She would not have that life in the United States. Chris Porden, another, he's not a house sitter, he's a digital nomad, right? Sustainably homeless, lives wherever he'd like to, just rents. Airbnbs, longer, term arrangements can be had pretty inexpensively, especially outside tourist areas, makes a US remote income, so has been able to have a really great quality of travel and have a great lifestyle without having to worry about housing, large housing expenses going towards that, eating up those funds that could go towards a nest egg. Of course, I share Diane's budget in Claim Your Dream Life that has line by line comparison, so you can see how much each category saves you by moving overseas. But I believe it's Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right-hand man, said, "Show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome." And here's part of the problem. Financial planners have no incentive to advise their clients of the impact of housing cost savings abroad. Think about it. If they advise their clients, oh, look how much you could save by moving overseas, they could potentially lose a client. Client's gone, doesn't use them anymore, or there's a built-in conflict of interest because the more assets they manage, the more money they make. So there's a built-in disincentive to advise clients to pull out their savings to enjoy their life, right? It's just the pile just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger because the commissions that the financial planner earns, unless you're using a fee-based financial planner, which those are available. And actually, that was something a mentor of mine years ago said to me, Dawn, get a financial planner and make sure they're fee-based. So you pay them a fee, they're not selling you financial service products and charging you commission for the assets that they have under management. So as I was preparing for this talk, so there's a new industry that is coming online. And for those of you that are looking for your next adventure, what do I want to do next with my life? Maybe this is something to consider. Retirement coaches. And the research shows that they are partnering with financial planning companies, financial service companies. And there's even predictions that within 5 years, every financial planning firm will have retirement coaches on staff or affiliated with them that they refer them to, which just makes sense. They're responding to all of the things that I'm talking about. And it's really, really important because especially, the folks that I'm talking to, we're talking about professionals, we're talking about successful traditional entrepreneurs that are saying, okay, this has been good, but I'm ready for what's next. That's a big transition to make. And it's a long one, right? Where especially we live to 100 years old and you're going to retire at maybe 60. That's 40 years. You're going to continue to enjoy your life, hopefully. So think about this. If you're a doctor, physician, and as you know, my first husband was a physician, so I understand that sort of ego infusing process where they really are, it's a big deal, right, to become a doctor. But then they go from who's who to who's he. So a doctor, he's a who's who, right? But now he is a retired doctor. Well, who's he, right? And so he has his ego invested in that career. There's a feeling of being lost without it. And I know this not just for doctors, it can be anyone who is used to identifying with a particular career choice. And now you're going to make a change. Your identity is really wrapped around that. So it takes time to adjust to this new phase of life, to this new identity. But unfortunately, we're really on our own to navigate all of the things that this transition means to us. So as you're thinking about these things, I want to ask a question. Are you making a living or making a dying? Right? In his book, Modern Madness, a psychotherapist, John Labir, discusses the parade of successful professionals he saw in his practice who were burned out and fatigued, and in both poor physical and mental health. And unfortunately, the quest for material wealth at the expense of a fulfilled, purposeful, balanced life can cause depression, anxiety, and stress. And in his case, the sample that he did, which is hundreds of people, in 60% of them, he saw this depression, anxiety, and stress. And what's happening here is we've been programmed to be consumers. And consumerism, the mantra is more is better. And that's as opposed to less is more, right? Which is really the truth. Because they've actually done studies, and it turns out that the more stuff we have, the less satisfied we are. I'll talk about that in a moment. But getting back to the making a living versus making a dying, many work many more than 40 hours a week. I know I did when I was a practicing attorney. I had to work more than 40 hours a week because I needed to bill 40 hours a week. Well, you can't bill for every moment that you're there. So I would often work 50, 60 hours a week. And yet wages have stagnated, savings rates are down, and debt levels are up. According to the Federal Reserve, a staggering 42% of households ages 45 to 54 have zero retirement savings. And I'm sure they're pretty stressed about that. While the median retirement savings for that age group is less than $100,000. Well, we all know you certainly can't retire in the United States on $100,000, and it might be hard to retire anywhere on that, right? To stop, depending on what your income level is. But the question I want to ask is, how much money will it take to make you happy? And what's interesting, this is where the research comes in. It turns out the income and happiness scale are inverted. In other words, the higher your income level is, the lower your happiness level. In societies where the income level is low, there's actually a pretty high level of happiness within those cultures. It's sort of counterintuitive. But if you haven't seen it, and I'll post a link in the comments so that you can see it, it's really, really powerful. But drop a comment if you've seen it. There's a video called The Story of Stuff. And the bottom line is, the more things we have, the more stuff we have, it doesn't make us happy. It actually makes us more unhappy. And then we end up consuming our life instead of living it. And we know consumerism is destroying our planet. And yet the governments tell us consumerism is good. It's what's required for economic growth. So how do we switch from a philosophy of growth, right? Because that means consumerism, to sustainability. And that is, before you buy something more, you ask the question, do I really need this? Is this something that's going to improve the quality of my life? And I'll also drop a comment in there, a link to a podcast interview I did a while back with Jess Marcy, who's a clutter expert. And I love what she said in that interview. She said the first step, if you've got a clogged toilet, the first step to fixing that is to stop putting more stuff in it, right? So if you have a clutter-filled environment or life, the first step is stop bringing more clutter in. And that can be very difficult if we have wrapped up our inner fulfillment with acquiring material possessions. So if we can embrace enough, that what we have is enough, we don't need this next color of this thing or this next generation of this thing. Tom and I, our TV broke this weekend. Weird situation. A black cat snuck in our pet door and crashed our TV. And so we had a TV in the bedroom, but it was a dumb TV. So I have an Apple TV, it's a Generation 3, and it was purchased in 2012. It's ancient. I can't get a YouTube app on there. I can't get a YouTube TV app on there. So now we're having to use our computer. So this planned obsolescence is for real in there. And I had to order Tom a new iPhone because he's got an iPhone 6. And we just read that they're not going to support that anymore. It makes it really difficult to have this sustainable mentality as a consumer when businesses don't. Businesses are still operating on the planned obsolescence model. The best we can do is control our own impulses and, as I say, stop looking for inner fulfillment by acquiring material possessions. So reducing that clutter. And it was it's really something that you kind of need to bring to your awareness, because otherwise you just sort of operate on autopilot with that programming and you're not even really aware of it happening. So, we know the first step is towards awareness. So I we need to ask the important questions, right? When will you retire if you work a job in particular that you're not particularly happy about, satisfied with? It's, in other words, it's work that you don't really want to continue doing forever. When are you going to retire? And then what will you do next? Where will you live? How will you live? Will you work part-time for money and or for purpose and meaning? Because we know that longevity is so closely tied to purpose and meaning. We have to have that purpose and meaning in place. And that's actually our third quarter topic, is purpose and meaning. So we're going to tie these all together. But we'll definitely talk about that during this wealth piece as well, because I think that's really important. Most people, if they don't need to work, they want to work. I know I'd never say never, right? I'll probably never retire, because if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And I fully intend to continue doing only work that I love. The next time you meet with your financial planner, tell them you don't want to talk about just money. So that's what I have for you today.
This episode of the Overseas Life Redesign podcast was brought to you by our sponsors. Thanks for tuning in. Did you love this episode of the Overseas Life Redesign podcast? Then please subscribe to our show and leave us a nice review. It's very much appreciated. We invite you to visit paradisechecklist.com and download our free Paradise Checklist to start your journey. We'd also love for you to become part of our Claim Your Dream Life community. Thank you for listening.
I will end it here and wish you guys a great night. And drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this first week of wealth and what you'd like to hear about going forward, because I'm open to diving into the content that interests you guys most. So take care. We'll see you soon.